Something big has happened and the Democrats better be listening. The red wave in this election has shattered the chokehold of the mainstream media on information, and it's truly fascinating how early Elon Musk had caught on to this when he bought Twitter. This conversation that he had with Tucker Carlson at Mar-a-Lago is one that the modern left should rather listen to with introspection instead of sulk and simmer in their defeat. Listen to this because it only becomes more relevant with time.
I think it made a big difference that President Trump and soon-to-be Vice President Vance went on lengthy podcasts.
Yes.
I think this makes this really makes a difference because people look at like Joe Rogan's podcast, which is great, and Lex Friedman's and the All In podcast, and to a reasonable-minded, smart person who's not like hardcore one way or the other, they just listen to someone talk for a few hours, and they that's how they decide whether you're a good person, whether they like you, and especially like Rogan's podcast, 3 hours long. I mean, you could. This is why I actually posted on X the nothing would do more damage to Kamala's campaign than going on Joe Rogan because she'd run out of non sequiturs after about 45 minutes.
Yeah, you can't hide in 3 hours.
Yeah, like hour 2 and 3 would be a complete melted puddle of nonsense. So it would just be absolute game over. That's why I shouldn't go on.
And if there's any lesson that you need to take away from this election, this is it. Over the last week after November 5th, I've scoured the left-wing media figures for their reactions to the crushing loss in the elections, and there was one name that was curiously missing, and that's Kamala Harris herself. Nobody seems to be saying the quiet part out loud that Kamala Harris is probably the worst and most uninspiring candidate that they've ever put up, at least since the turn of the century. And she deserves the blame for the loss, and no, you don't need to cut her any slack for having just 3 months of a campaign. The Kamala campaign's media strategy with short, scripted, and segmented interviews with mainstream media figures absolutely paled in comparison to online and alternative media, where the true voter base existed. By the way, we're one of those independent platforms that the mainstream media fears, so please subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay in the loop. And what did the Democrats do in response? The Democratic campaign opted for embarrassing displays like this to try and reach out to young voters, paying $5 million to campaign money for Megan Thee Stallion to sing and twerk on stage. All that while her voters struggled to put a finger on any of her actual policy positions, but as podcasts and long-form conversations become way more important than the MSM for the first time, it's only the candidate that catches up to this trend that will always be going to win. And that was Donald Trump this time. For a bit of the statistical context, Kamala Harris has done about 10 interviews this entire campaign, and the most watched one was less than 4 million views with 60 minutes at just 20 minutes in length. Contrast that with Donald Trump's 50 million views for a 3-hour conversation with Joe Rogan, and you get a feeling for how Donald Trump's media strategy absolutely dwarfed the Democrats, and it's in line with the new reality of election cycles and media appearances. If you remember back in July with how CNN covered the Trump assassination attempt as just falling at the rally, any last remaining trust in the mainstream media had been depleted. And for Elon Musk, it's that moment that likely justified the financial loss he may have taken for acquiring Twitter to turn into a truly free speech platform.
So you endorsed Trump within minutes of him being shot. I mean, how many? I mean, it was literally minutes, I think, as I remember.
Yeah.
And then you just went more all in than I've ever seen anybody ever go.
Yeah.
What was the? Did you ever doubt, or did you just decide to go all in and you just did it?
I mean, my philosophy is you play to win. You don't play by half measure. So, I mean, I was with the team every day, 7 days a week, just working the early votes in Pennsylvania and other swing states. First registrations. First, like if people don't register, they can't vote. So the initial focus was just maximizing registrations. And then once the registration deadline was over, just getting the early votes.
X, from my perspective, played a pivotal role, not just in this election, but in keeping the country alive.
Yeah. Well, X is, I think, the one place where you can find out the truth.
Yes.
And
the only place.
Yeah.
Isn't it incredible foresight for Musk to be able to see this coming from nearly 3 years ago? The future of elections will now be decided by who engages better in long-form online conversations, and who knows, we may even get to see candidates debate as podcast guests Rather than segmented formal debates, in all of that, you can say goodbye to the old guard of social media to allow that to happen freely. We've already seen that happen when YouTube allegedly tried to throttle Joe Rogan's podcast with Donald Trump when it couldn't be found in search results, even though that's not an accusation that Joe himself has made. But instead, this new platform of conversation will likely be hosted on platforms like X, Rumble, and to agree even Spotify, given how they've refused to capitulate to the leftist pressure against Joe Rogan before. But of course, that doesn't mean more people won't try to shut down these sites for platforming a more right-wing perspective, and we've seen those efforts go into overdrive since Elon Musk has joined forces with Trump.
So how much pressure, to the extent you can say, has there been on you to shut it down or to censor it?
Well, I mean, apart from the multiple Democrats saying that I should go, they want to put me in jail, take away all government contracts from my companies, nationalize my companies, deport me as an illegal, and have me arrested because I'm apparently Putin's best friend. Nothing besides those things.
So you saw Rachel Maddow sort of casually, who's the single most popular media figure on the left.
Yeah.
For the record, say just sort of casually, well, Elon Musk will obviously need to be separated from his companies. You know, he can't be a government, he can't hold government contracts going forward. Like, how do you respond to that?
Rachel Maddow is a crazy person. You know, she's just a frothing at the mouth, crazy fascist, basically. Dressed as sort of pretending to be a liberal, but she's just really like I can't imagine if she was in charge, actually in a position of political power, what a nightmare that would be.
Well, many would die.
Yes.
But whether you think Elon Musk has bought himself some time with the election of Donald Trump, that's not really what matters right now. The most important takeaway from the red wave on November 5th is that the arena in which future elections will be fought has forever changed. The mainstream media has lost all power to construct narratives or foster political dialogue. That's especially true when, according to Gallup polls, just 12% of Republicans trust the MSM, and even Democratic trust in media is almost at the lowest that it's ever been at just 44%, reporting a fair amount of trust in the mainstream media narratives. That has left open a massive vacuum and hunger for political dialogue that only one side was able to capitalize on for this election and win. And in the meantime, I think America truly got to know Donald Trump as a person behind the caricature of the villain that the mainstream media has painted for the past 8 years.
What do you think of him? You spent a lot of time with him in the last several months.
I think he's a very interesting, funny person, and you know, much maligned by the media, obviously, and he's withstood a lot, you know, and I think he's you know, you mentioned that as you mentioned, I endorsed him immediately after he was shot because you know, when you see somebody under fire, what is their reaction to that? Because you know immediately, is someone brave or are they a coward?
Yes.
Okay, the bullets, they get hit by bullets. Blood's, you know, come down the face. It could have been a second shooter, and yet, you know, he's going fight, you know. That's true courage.
Yes.
Can't fake it.
Impossible.
And America is the home of the free and land of the brave. So that's who we want as president.
It was so
we want a strong, brave person as president.
Amen.
And he is that.
Perhaps Donald Trump's courage in the face of the assassination attempt also cemented that image in a way like very few things genuinely can, as we've seen America had the choice between a candidate dodging bullets versus a candidate dodging questions. And in the kind of world that we live in right now, it's clear that America preferred someone who gave them enough respect to speak directly to them in long-form conversation and promised peace throughout strength on the international stage. Those happen to be the two things this country was most hungry for, and it reflected on November 5th. But let me know in the comments if you agree with this assessment, because I think we're only going to see online media push legacy news channels more into the oblivion as the years go on.